Thanks everyone. I've got 15 minutes to run through, but for those who asked earlier, the slides will be available. So I've been asked to just actually say what the hell is co-regulatory model? What does that mean? And Dave mentioned it in his session, and actually it means many things. And what I'm going to do is take you through case studies. I've been involved in electricity, gas and telecommunications, so with water I've achieved the Grand Slam, and so I'll take you through how they differ in different ways. So co-regulatory can be modelled to what you need to achieve, and it can be designed in different ways. And as the Minister said, she wants a conversation about a new regulatory system, so that's what we're engaged with. And our key point here, the key point if you take nothing else out of this, is that co-regulatory is about ensuring that the knowledge of the technical knowledge of what's going on in asset management is brought to the table, particularly around rule design, technical specification approach and that sort of thing, as opposed to operating in a vacuum, which generally means empire building and high costs. So how can we get a system that achieves the outcomes we want, but in an appropriate way that gets long-term buy-in? So what does it mean? First of all, co-regulation is regulation. Okay? It's not a cop-out. The rules apply. And I'll talk an example where I'm at with the gas industry company later on. Secondly, it is independent. Okay? It is not a cosy little arrangement by the players. So anyone who's saying that it's not independent is technically incorrect. It is independent. It has to be to provide confidence to the end recipient, the public, consumers. What it attempts to do is to help align long-term interests of suppliers and consumers on the value chain. And it seeks to improve the quality information that's presented to the regulator to allow more informed decision-making. So from an outcomes point of view, and we start from an outcomes point of view, so the old mantra is form follows function. So let's identify function, not form then function, okay? So what we're saying is what are the outcomes we want? And in drinking water, for example, at its highest level, we don't want to make our people ill and kill them. And the environmental side of the equation, we want the outcomes that our regional sector is specified to be achieved over time. What we're saying is that in terms of the design to get there, we should preserve the ability to innovate. Okay, so what is the right set of structures to achieve that outcome? But the outcome must be achieved. No best practicable steps. No, I can't afford it. None of that. You've got to get there, and that means part of the regulatory design will be the time period to get there on that sort of thing, and that's not a straightforward question. So that co-regulation, like any regulation, focuses on delivering customer value, effective stewardship of the assets, performance improvement and transparency about that performance. So the work, for example, the government has commissioned around information disclosure is classic utility regulation. And when I came into the sector, I was astounded that we didn't have it. Okay, that is straight out stuff saying, what am I getting for the price I am paying, and am I happy with that? Outputs and interventions, however, may differ because you've got better information from the regulatory point of view, and you also build a better regulatory culture. It's more collegial, which is my point of. We've actually thought about, we don't have to go into this, but when our Three Waters project, we thought about what are we looking for in regulatory outcome. And first of all, let's understand what the customer's needs and expectations. You know, there's a diverse range of customers, are we providing with appropriate information to make decisions? How can we have a system that incentivises learning and growth amongst the sector? They're doing something really neat, how do I think about it? And more importantly, how do I incentivise them to think about capturing that innovation? How do we avoid silos? We need to promote efficient usage, so it's no surprise to people in this room that I'm a big advocate of metering, because metering gives power to the customer. I can now understand what I'm using and how I'm using, and from the owner's point of view, I can get better network utilisation, which means I can offset long-term CapEx because I get better investment from that. Financial management improves and asset management improves, but as I say, I'll talk through these quickly. What benefit does co-reg bring? First of all, you get shared regulatory outcomes. There's buy-in from the sector that's being regulated. There's therefore less adversarial. That doesn't mean there isn't adversarial discussions, it's just less, more collegial. You get better information, as I said, you get better performance and transparency, and actually, let's not forget, and I just had a discussion with one member over the break, regulation costs money. We've talked about the cost of the assets to improve, but the regulatory framework costs money too. That's the way it is. So, and you can expect that any regulated creative will be funded by sector levies. Okay, that is standard practice. If it's not done that way, that'll be unusual. So people want to know, so how do you ensure you get downwards pressure on empire building, as I call it? Okay, so what's that incentive? How do we think about it from a regulatory design point of view? So I want to talk about 3 case studies, and I declare an interest. I'll talk about the GIC. I was an alternative board member on the GIC for Genesis Energy. I'll talk about electricity market, and I was heavily involved in that over many years. And finally, I'll talk about the telco market, where I was the independent chair for several years. So first of all, each of these is what I would call a form of co-regulation. Each of them is different. Okay, so let me talk about the gas market regulation. So, under Part 4A of the Gas Act, which the previous Labor government brought in this new regime, the Minister of the day, currently Minister of Energy and Resources, has the ability to designate an industry body to achieve the statutory outcomes set out in the Act, and they're classic: customer outcome, performance, transparency, as well as achieve the outcomes of the government policy statement from time to time. Sitting in the Act, not enacted, is a thing known as the Energy Commission. Okay? So the Energy Commission would be the Electricity Authority plus gas overview if it created, and that is what is known as a regulatory threat. Okay? That is called an incentive to perform. So industry, if you want to work with the GIC to achieve the outcomes you think that's better, perform, because I can do this. And once I do this, there is no going back. Okay, it's an incentive, and it's worked. So, they're required to deliver these outcomes. It's overseen by a board. It's currently chaired by Jim Bolger, called the Prime Minister. The independents are in the majority, but there are 3 industry representatives elected by the industry at the table, representing the various arms of the industry, and they ensure that that decision-making is appropriate, but beyond no illusions, the independents are in the majority and swing the vote. The decisions the GIC makes are rules that can be and are enforced. Okay? Within the GIC, there's a defined what we call working group structure, to use the vernacular. That is where people in the industry work with the GIC staffers to work about how do you evolve the market, what are the rules around transmission access for, to enable competition, all this sort of thing, and that's the co-regulatory nature of it. Eventually that stuff goes up to the GIC board and they make a decision, but always remember it's within a statutory framework that the Minister of the day has oversight of and a direct incentive to deliver. So that's the incentive, that's co-regulation. The exception to that is transmission and distribution from the pricing point of view, for that, which is covered, and that's covered by Part 4 of the Commerce Act. Case 1. Electricity market regulation. I said to someone at our policy advisory group the other day, electricity is a work in progress. It's been going since 1988. It's still going. There's another review underway. David Spiles with that. The actual rules of the market have been in place since 1 October 1996. That was known as the NZM and Maria. The electricity market and Maria dealt with eventually customer switching, but also technical things like measuring how much you're using. And that was known as self-regulation, but I'd even say that was a form of co-regulation, because if you were not achieving the government's outcomes, the threat was regulation, and guess what? It didn't rain in 2001, and we got, that's probably the simplest way David's eyebrows went up. That created a thing called the Electricity Commission, which was that, but even under the Electricity Commission with appointed people, the working group structure and the rule design kept there. The players were at that table, influencing that, giving that information up to the regulator, and to ensure that data and that experience was there. That is now morphed into the Electricity Authority, so it's another thing to point. If people think regulatory design is a snapshot and it's done, I've got news for you. And it's a sophisticated working group process. And what is interesting in my observation of this is that the core mechanics of the wholesale and retail markets have actually not fundamentally changed since 1986. They have at the margin, we've introduced things like real-time pricing and things like that, which I'm bored with, but bottom line is the mechanics still work. So that's another form of co-regulation. The final one is the TCF. So that's Telecommunications Carriers Form. Under the Telecommunications Act, the Commerce Commission is able to designate a body to be what is known as the forum. and they have designated the TCF, and that is an organisation made up of all the providers, from the big ones such as Spark and Vodafone through to what is known as Tier 3 small providers at the margin. They all have representation on the TCF board. I used to chair it. And within the regulatory regime, there is an ability for both the TCF itself to develop codes that are regulation, or for the Commerce Commission to ask the TCF to do that. So, and there are many of these codes now, and they've generally been designed to improve regulatory outcomes over time. The two classic ones that I've noted there are customer transfer, that is what is known as number portability in the old days. That is, if I want to change from Vodafone to Spark on a mobile network, I can, it's easy. It wasn't once upon a time, but that's to incentivise that. And co-siting, that is actually if you've got one mobile tower, that more than the company that owns the mobile tower can use that tower. Because originally that was used to lock out other players from the market. So they've created that, what was those known as access codes, and that has the force of regulation. Okay, so co-compliance, incentive to comply, once again is the regulatory tech. Now I'll give you three examples, sorry, I've got a minute to go. 3 examples of that. The point I'm trying to make for you is that you can craft this to the need. The key point is that in each of those different models, the people who are the asset owners who are in a particular market can help shape the regulation, but be under no illusion, it is regulation. Okay? Now, what might be a possible model? Sort of things that, I mocked this up last night, so this is just me thinking out loud. So, for example, in a water system, you'd have a responsible minister. That's an interesting question because, as I say, I've counted about 8 or 9 agencies that have responsibility for water in some way, shape or form, so I'm interested in that stream of work. But let's assume you get a responsible minister. Then we have a statutory and GPS objectives, i.e. what are the outcomes we want to deliver from a health, environmental and an economic regulation point of view. We've got Anton talk to you about what economic regulation is later on. That then you can set up a new code, like the GRC, I've used the GRC model, majority independence, enforcement entity. That model, for the sake of argument, the asset owners, of which there were 67 or so across the country, give or take, would be shareholders, which is the gas industry model. The little wheel there is the big wheel before, and they can be, for example, part of the outcomes they're designed to achieve over time, plus whatever you want to do from a health perspective, and so on and so forth. And then at that spot, who regulates the sector? So it can work that way. Our policy advisory group asked us to think about, based on the outcomes of the inquiry and the direction of travel signalled in the release paper, there's another one, which hasn't come out yet, what would a drinking water regulatory model look like if you're going, so it could be like that. But another one we put in is that the responsible minister is the actual person that approves standards, okay? And what in this sort of formulation, you'd have a separate advisory body to the minister, helping the minister understand what those standards should be, and particularly the cost benefit of those. Because remember, someone's got to pay. The reason and the key point in that slide is it differentiates the regulator or the enforcement entity from the standard setter. So it's my personal view that bundling the setting of the regulation with the enforcement agency in a direct regulatory environment without industry participation is not wise. Okay, so that's to try to put a bit of tension into the system. That's me. John's given me 2 minutes. I'm not using them. And that's all I'll do. I'll take any questions. Cool, that was quick.
Well, thank you very much, Malcolm. We probably do actually have time for one question if you're willing to answer that. You finished early. Is there any questions for Malcolm? One at the back here.
By the way, the $10 is still up here.
Hi, I'm Jim Graham from Auckland, New Zealand. I've just got a simple question for you, Malcolm, and it's can you give us an example of where the co-regulatory model has successfully been used for record standards setting?
No, I can't, but that doesn't particularly worry me. One thing I love about New Zealand is we innovate and apply our own ways of doing things. I'm not a fan for had model or travel. What is the right model for New Zealand and how can it apply? That's the question. If we can learn from overseas jurisdictions, well, of course we should. But we need to understand the New Zealand context and apply the right thing. Each of those models has been designed specific for that. Now, there is a broader issue there which I've raised with officials, that we'd have a fourth one. We'd have electricity, water, gas, telco. There's a broader machinery government question about whether you want that or not, but that's not my problem. I'm saying I can't point to that necessarily. There may be someone just haven't looked at it. My concern is how do you deliver a right-sized, effective model for New Zealand that is durable and achieves the outcomes over time and is affordable in the long run. That's where I'm coming from.